Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pelvic Health Explorer interviews. This is February or January, sorry. And this month, as I promised, we're speaking with Jessica McKinney. She's going to be talking about innovation, digital health, and new products. And in there, we're going to talk about a little bit about what do things like FDA clearance mean and what's good ways to really evaluate products. And since we're in the business of recommending products and learning about new products, I thought this might be a very timely interview to bring to you. So, Jessica, I'm going to give it over to you and go ahead and introduce
Great.
yourself and let's get going.
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm delighted to get the chance to be doing this Public Health Explorer interview with you. There are lots of topics I like to talk about, and this is one for sure. So I will kick us off just to kind of let you know where we're going. Obviously, you see the topics that we're going to cover. I've got a lot of content here that you'll have access to on the slides that will be available to you. And I just want to kind of pull out some key points on each to keep us moving and give you, the biggest take-home bundle of slides possible, but keep us on a good timeline. And then we'll just camp out on a few to drive a few points home. I think kind of in kicking us off and going to this, our first slide, this is part of my introduction. So I come into this from having worked really for about 7 years in the development of a product that kind of sits at the intersection of medical device, digital therapeutic, and digital health. That is in the pelvic floor space very firmly. It's called the Leva Pelvic Health System. It's currently owned and manufactured by a company called Azena Health, and I am a full-time employee of that company. So this will share some elements about that product in the story, but is really kind of a otherwise like not branded talk. It's just used as an example in this talk. So we'll start off with just an overview of digital health. I think that is a word that we're hearing getting bandied around quite a lot. And this slide is an example from a society group called the Digital Therapeutics Alliance that provides a really nice overview of how digital health is really an umbrella term. And there is a lot that fits under that. So we think about mobile health applications, health information technology, devices, sensors, wearables, and then an emerging field called digital therapeutics, which is kind of a class that uses software kind of with or without a medical device to manage, treat, or prevent a health condition, disease, or disorder. Telehealth also falls under digital health. So when I use that term, I mean, there's a lot that's encompassed in that. And that's how I understand the definition of digital health as we approach this talk and approach my work. So within the digital health technology landscape, this just highlights some of the different technologies that are components of this or where we may intersect. A few that are really key and maybe familiar to you would be the things that support clinicians or services focus on that. EHR, EMR, that's a key example. But there are also patient-facing health technologies, and these can be wellness type technologies, apps, for example, fitness trackers, but can also be technologies used in diagnostics, monitoring, or in actually delivering a therapeutic intervention. There are a lot of benefits of digital health that have been described variously. We aren't here to go deep into all of those, but you see these highlighted here that these are a lot of the claims that are around different aspects of it to reduce inefficiencies, improve access, reduce costs, increase quality, and to personalize medicine. Certain technologies may not hit all 5 of those, but those are some of the well-known benefits. And I think that as we are providing some examples later, really looking at ways to improve access, I'll say personally has been a big motivator for me to make the transition into the work that I'm doing right now. I was previously, founder and of a multi-center private practice and, practicing in my community and kept a very busy schedule, but was continually thinking about what else we could do to improve access to therapeutic interventions. And that's part of my personal journey into what I'm doing in digital health and med device. Within women's health specifically, digital health and women's health is kind of beginning to have a moment. There are there's increasing attention around this. This is from a report that came out just a couple years ago, looking at funding. So funding going into different women's health focused digital health companies. So on the left hand side, you see the different sectors that those have been in. And then on the right, you see those that have been kind of the top funded clinical indications. So most of the money that went in, you see across the very top from 2018 all the way through almost the end of 21 was in mental health. So very consistently, more money was going into that within women's health than anything else, followed by cardiovascular disease, then diabetes, primary care, oncology, and substance use disorder. So um, as we um, as we look at opportunities, there really are quite a lot from the women's health space that could stand for more investment. There have been recently, when I say recently, like last week, just two additional reports coming out around what an incredible market there is in terms of business opportunity in women's health specifically, and digital health is just kind of one sector and one way that will show up for us. I wanted to make just a quick comment here about it specifically in pelvic floor disorders. To back up, you heard me highlight access being a real key benefit that I think digital health could bring into our space, and that we really learn how to be kind of experts in thinking about the one-on-one care for the person in front of us with a pelvic floor disorder, but that when we look at the statistics around pelvic floor disorders, we need to also hold space for the fact that these are population health issues, and that we really need to challenge ourselves as a healthcare community in this space to look at scalable solutions to help meet these women's needs or the needs of other individuals. So for example, we have here the kind of most recent prevalence numbers around urinary incontinence, hitting bothersome incontinence for nearly 30 million United States women. And so that is more than any of us are going to be able to treat on an individual level. And so, I'm really excited about the opportunity that digital health promises to start thinking about new ways to expand our care paradigms to be able to deliver some meaningful care in the context of pelvic floor disorders and other things that affect a lot of folks. So some of the things that it can do is to expand capacity, leveraging technology really to think about what is evidence-based medicine, what is evidence-based interventions and guideline-based care, and then how does technology help us to implement that essentially. And really there's an opportunity to explore how this could mitigate health disparities.
I think that this is a really good point to bring up and to highlight here because I know there's a lot of people out there that get like, if they're not seeing me one to one, how do I know if they're doing things right? How do I know if they're progressing? And being able to be a little bit more savvy about digital technology could actually expand and help your own practice. So when we talk
Mhm.
about population health, we're trying to reach people who can't even get to a practice, and all of that is kind of a no-brainer. But what about the busy practice that has a huge waiting list and people are trying to get in? And how could digital pelvic health work in that capacity. So perhaps people could get started with basic
Mhm.
information and basic what is a Kegel and how do you do it? And, just some, like lose 10% of your body weight can help. Here's some ways to do it. Um, urgency, frequency, drink more water, drink more water, drink less water. Maybe
Mhm.
let's look at, hey, did you know that that cup of coffee could speed up your need to go to the bathroom 3 times? A lot of different things can be done here that people can access and use, and then they can get in to see you, and maybe you wouldn't have to see them as often,
Mhm.
or, as so that you would have more room on your schedule to work with more people because they would be getting the information and some of the work, elsewhere, which could actually help take the burden off of practices a little bit and expand their capacity somewhat.
Great point. Thank you for helping to drive that home. I feel like this is really in here to help challenge all of our thinking around this, and to get all of us really invested in how changing that thinking can really change the status of health for for people with pelvic floor disorders, for the populations that we treat. So thank you for that point. There is evidence around this. You see, there are a lot of citations here. I'm happy to be in touch around this if you wanted to dive in any more deeply. But just to say that there is existing and ongoing emerging evidence about the effectiveness of digital health solutions. Really, that the evidence supports that this can help us improve service delivery, like Susan said. The barriers to healthcare in general are very steep, complicated, multifactorial. And this is certainly a way that there is evidence showing that it can improve the delivery of the health service and that they're effective. There has been level 2 evidence summarized in a scoping review about mobile technologies for UI management, and level 1 evidence for a specific product that we can talk about later. So that kind of sets the stage for saying, like, we've got a broad definition of digital health. We're recognizing that there is kind of activity and a need to close a gap in the broader healthcare industry around how technology and innovation can be applied to really help accelerate women's health and women's healthcare. That there has been an increasing amount of funding going into those solutions, into those companies, but that it really lags behind that of many other health conditions. So this is a space to be following and continue to watch. We're going to shift now to just talk about then evaluating new technologies. Susan made this comment as we got started around how you often are going to be the first person that somebody comes to. So the patients that you're seeing may come to you and say, hey, I saw this ad on Instagram, or you may want to be figuring out what new technologies you could be suggesting to your clients, whether they're seeing you in person, remotely, or hybrid. So this will talk about some of those ways to evaluate those technologies. So there are a few different ways to think about categorizing how we look at that. So quality, access, and utilization will be really kind of where we focus here. So quality meaning, like, kind of, does something do what it says it does? And how do we know that it's safe, effective? Access, how do people get access to it? And then utilization is, what does it mean to actually put it into practice and start using it? There we go. So from a quality perspective, this is kind of like part taking in some information and then part figuring out, like, oh, what can I do with this information? So I want to share that, we have a regulatory body, the FDA. Everybody's heard about that. But there are actually 3 different ways that, a product or technology can be known to the FDA. So there is a registered status, which essentially is a company saying, here's our product, it's going to be commercially available. And so the FDA has record of that. Not all products would be allowed to do this, only things that are low risk. But important thing to note is that if something is FDA registered, it means that the FDA has not evaluated product safety or the claims that someone makes. So if someone says this product is, for the treatment of knee pain, FDA would not have looked at that if it is a registered product. And FDA,
so in essence, here it's buyer beware.
exactly,
right? So recommending a product
exactly,
that's FDA registered. So some of the claims that they're making and the things that they're saying may or may not be based on really good evidence or evidentiary support, but it certainly hasn't been really evaluated by the FDA body, which would come in as a third party and really look at, what is this actually doing? What are they claiming? And is it sane, or
absolutely,
that, and what are the risks involved? Yeah, I think that's an
right.
important point to clear up for everybody.
I think so too. And I've learned a lot about this over the years. In fact, learning that then, like, the next level of this is something that would be FDA cleared. So these would be class 2 products, moderate risk products. And so here, most prescription digital therapeutics. So the thing I talked about at the beginning that is like software driven, either software only or software hardware solutions to treat health conditions. Those, if they are looked at by FDA, would fall under class 2 medical devices. And this is really going to be a lot of the things that we would encounter in kind of our clinical practice as physical therapists. So this means that the company representing the product has created a portfolio of kind of background information on health condition, on monitoring safety, any kind of adverse events associated with the use of the product, and brought all of this to FDA. FDA has looked at it, have believed that it's safe, and I've looked at your claims, so they're satisfied that this does not pose undue risk to the population. And then clearly they approve an indication for product use. So the indication for use is a sentence that is usually in their approval letter. So you can find these. They are all available for us online if you look it up. And that says, that this product has been approved for. And the language is something to pay attention to. Is it approved for pelvic floor muscle training that may help incontinence? Is it just approved for pelvic floor muscle training? Is it actually approved for the treatment of urinary incontinence, just for example? So you'll see some changes in the language there that are important for us to pay attention to as clinicians. And then the last is FDA approved. So with these, the safety and effectiveness have been evaluated for the use. There are standards around manufacturing. This absolutely applies to new drugs, to biologics. And you can see there that they're like higher risk medical devices, such as a pacemaker or a breast implant, less likely to be the things that we run into. But I think that language kind of colloquially is what most of us think about with FDA, so that you can take away from this, there is a difference between something being FDA approved and something being FDA cleared. Cleared is like they've been like, okay, claims make sense. We think that this would be safe. It's lower risk, but the things that are higher risk go through a more rigorous process. And if they go through it successfully, would emerge as approved. The link here is important. So say you come across a device, some type of technology, and you want to look up like, what does the FDA have to say about this? Have they looked at it? This website is one that you can access, and you can search by health condition, you can search by different keywords, product name, company name, and so forth, and get that information so that you can learn about, if it's cleared, what is the specific indication? Sometimes that's easy to find on a company website, and sometimes it's not. So that was one of the ones I thought was really important for us to camp out on. There's a little bit more that goes into the quality. And again, like I personally think that this is a really important thing. I think that, our clients, and I mean, my work has really been nested in women's health. So I feel very strongly like women deserve products that have been validated, that really have gone through rigor and that they can expect them to work. So another key piece of looking at quality is the clinical data. So we should be really good at sifting through this to figure out if something new we learn about is going to be useful or not. And there are different types of studies. Often a pilot data or proof of concept study may be part of a product's portfolio. A validation type study that looks at the mechanism of action. Usually they will progress to some type of randomized controlled trial. And then real world evidence is really an emerging kind of data that is really powerful. It's when there is some way to study how this has shown up in real world users. So people who aren't enrolled in a trial, but they're just commercially, accessed the product, they use it, but being able to monitor how they do and then look at that evidence and publish that. So those are different types of studies. And then there are different types of publications. So there may be a company that says in our clinical data, blah, 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 but then they didn't publish their clinical data. They say data on file. There could be a white paper that is done. So that's something that typically would be prepared by a company and is like a little bit polished, but that hasn't undergone any kind of peer review process. So kind of in progressing levels of rigor, a company or a product may have information around their data being in a conference proceeding or an abstract. So say it was presented as a poster at some conference, and that shows up in the conference proceedings that are published, as a special issue of a journal usually. But maybe it didn't go on to be kind of a full-length publication for some reason. So then lastly, and the thing that we can kind of sink our teeth into the most and maybe feel the best about, admitting my biases here, is something that shows up in a peer-reviewed journal. So that there is one of these types of studies that still was done with enough rigor and can go in front of a jury of peers, essentially, and get published as a full-length manuscript. Usually companies are going to put claims that come out of this data on their websites, their promotional materials, if they have that information available around their product. And the type of data really does depend on a product stage of its life cycle. I mentioned the product I've worked on, I've done for about 7 years. So we've kind of gone through a lot of these over that time. And so, something that is coming out, you wouldn't expect to have something with like 5-year longitudinal data if it's just coming into the market, for example. So clinicaltrials.gov is where you can look for information about that to see, because sometimes maybe a trial was registered there at clinicaltrials.gov, and you can find some information about the study design, but then you don't have, then maybe you can't find that it was actually published. So, I mean, there is a bit of sleuthing that goes on here, and there are different times when you'll be more or less invested in doing that, but I just want to give you some little nuggets to consider if you're trying to learn about something for your own sake and for your patients to figure that out. So you're going to be kind of sinking into that information to figure out, do I think that this product works? Do I think that it's only going to work for a certain subset of people? Who are those people? Is it better than what they would do right now in any kind of way? It's better for effectiveness, or it's more accessible, or people are more likely to participate in it for whatever reason. Is it better? Does the mechanism of action make sense to you, like wearing your clinical hat? And has that technology been validated? The marketing claims I've kind of been alluding to, saying like, oh, you're going to see stuff that's written on a company's website or in their promotional materials. And so this is really important, is that the marketing claims, meaning what they're saying to try to get someone to be excited about this product, really needs to align with the regulatory status, the approved conditions for use, meaning is it cleared by FDA and the approved language around an indication, and with the clinical evidence. So these are just some other questions, and you probably would first come across something in a brochure, right, or on a website or in an ad. And so thinking like, oh, okay, what are the claims that they're making? And if I look this up, does it match their FDA status? Do they overstate efficacy or effectiveness, or does it seem like, no, that really matches with the data that's available, for example? So pivoting to access, there are different ways that patients can gain access to new technologies. Prescription or over the counter are different reasons. Sometimes it's because of the risk profile of something, and sometimes there are other reasons why something is prescriptive versus over the counter. The cost of the product often factors in, always factors in. And then insurance reimbursement, or kind of where does it stand with payers? And here, just to note that there is a lot that goes into whether a product is covered or not by insurance. I can say that's categorically one of the first questions that we ever get is, oh, is it covered by insurance? And it is the payers that make that decision, not the company. And that is a very long process, usually, that requires quite a lot of tenacity, a whole lot of data, and a whole lot of advocacy, actually, not just from the company, but from patients, the public, and from providers. So here, this is talking about just kind of like how do payers access digital therapeutic products specifically. And I think that this is just important as you're thinking about the emerging digital technologies specifically. And there's a lot of work going into kind of educating clinicians and people in those settings around what is available and then how people would get them. So turn on utilization. Product usability is one way to think about the needs. And there's a lot of work being done really to design products with the needs of patients and providers in mind from the beginning, which is exciting. But those are questions you can ask is like, does this serve my client in the way that it's intended? Or if it's something that's designed for me in my practice, does it serve me as it's intended? Is there support for technical problems, for troubleshooting, and then any other additional product features that may help the product be more usable. And so this just looks, I think this is a great checklist to really apply to anything that we'd be looking to incorporate is like, is this thing, this technology, this innovation, is it the right indication? It's only going to work if it's for the right patient, the right type of therapy for that patient, the right timing and frequency, so on and so forth. But you see that there are all of these different ways that you're really trying to get all of these ways to satisfy not just appropriate digital therapeutic product utilization, but really any type of new technology. So I want to give you a case example here. This is the product I said that I've worked on for a while, but doing it really through the lens of what we've talked about before. So this is a product that fundamentally is going to guide pelvic floor muscle training. So it was built around, the foundations of pelvic floor muscle training as a first-line care, a first-line treatment for urinary incontinence, as a treatment for fecal incontinence, and really an understanding the most contemporary, technical definition of PFMT as embracing all of the components of strength, endurance, power, or relaxation, and that one of those may be the focus, or any and all of them may be the focus of a pelvic floor muscle training program. It recognizes the immense barriers and the underutilization that exists to implementing pelvic floor muscle training. So in plain language, it's something that we have known for a really long time works well for a lot of people when it's the right intervention. But there have been a lot of problems in figuring out how to scale this solution for reasons that are not only reflected on the patient, the individual, but the health system and on society. So with all of this in mind, that technology was really applied to the development of this product, the Leva Pelvic Health System. It consists of an intravaginal wand that you see on the left-hand side. So from about the Leva mark here up is inserted in the vagina. There are 6 motion sensors called accelerometers in this kind of deconstructed second image you see. And those are the same movement sensors that are in your phone that let you know if you're looking at it in landscape or you turn and it needs to look in portrait mode. So 6 of these are there and they communicate with the phone about the orientation of those sensors in space to create a representative image on the smartphone of how it is aligned within the vagina. And then it is really kind of rich with information around how to instruct and correct pelvic floor muscle training technique. It directs therapeutic exercise, tracks adherence, and is with an app that is compatible with both iOS and Android. And this screen just shows kind of what happens when somebody's using it. She's standing, she's inserted the Leva and is relaxing. That white line is following the movement of those sensors, kind of relaxing to a baseline that sets to her at the beginning of every session. Here she's engaging her pelvic floor, lifting and holding, essentially kind of built around our understanding of functional anatomy of the pelvic floor, and that it would lift and squeezing in a way that provides horizontal compression and translation, and then goes back into an active rest screen. So the software piece has instructional videos. The training itself, it's 2.5 minutes twice a day. So a 15-second work session, a 15-second rest session, performed 5 times and then done twice daily. And they're supported with a care management team for 12 weeks. The app has a lot of design-rich features. So again, kind of surveying the whole evidence around what are the drivers of adherence and health behavior change when it comes to this, because this may be a great intervention, but it won't work if they don't do it, right? So building in a lot of those design features and doing user-centered design all the way along, like talking to users. Does this make sense to you? Does this feel motivating to you? And taking feedback. So this is something that we've made a lot of changes over the years and continue to iterate. So here, go back to that FDA slide to put this in kind of a plain language example. This is a product that has been looked at by FDA, deemed to be safe, and they have cleared it for the treatment of stress, mixed, and mild to moderate urgency urinary incontinence, including overactive bladder in women. So when I talked about language, that is the specific language from this indication. It's treatment of chronic fecal incontinence in women, which according to this is defined as 3 months or more, and then strengthening of weak pelvic floor muscles. I talked about clinical data. There are other trials, but I just want to highlight, I'm not going to take you through all of these, but there's a randomized controlled trial that was done with almost 300 women, randomizing them to using this medical device or doing pelvic floor muscle training at home with written and audiovisual instructions. 8 weeks was their primary outcome. So that was the end of the active intervention. And then they've been followed up to 24 months. And the 24-month outcomes actually just published 2 days ago. You want to dig in. And so with this, we saw that after 8 weeks, the LEVA group outperformed the home pelvic floor muscle training group on several different measures, on measures of daily SUI episodes, and in symptom improvement as measured with the urogenital distress inventory. Additionally, there's kind of another way to contextualize the change in scores there, the PASS, which is just kind of a threshold below which people tend to no longer be pursuing care. So that was a threshold that was crossed in the LEVA group and not crossed in the Kegel or at home pelvic floor muscle training group. So again, this was what we saw first at 8 weeks. Again, that's the end of the primary intervention. And then they were followed for 6 and 12 months thereafter. And then again, 24 was just published. And here, I don't want to go into these. These are here for you. The article's also open access. All of them are, so you can get those. But the take home from this was essentially that when we looked over this timeline, the difference between the groups was really maintained. And this was without any additional intervention. So they did their exercises for 8 weeks with LEVA and didn't do anything else, didn't use it again. And up to 24 months, there was still statistical and clinically meaningful change and difference between groups. There's some additional outcome measures that, again, we found that the LEVA group was nearly twice as likely to report improvement on the PGI-I when we compared it to the control group. And then there are several other measures that were used. So again, in looking, like, this is something where we're using validated measures and publishing findings and describing our data and really going out to demonstrate long-term data. And the company with this product has kind of a body of published research. So again, when you're looking for like where do claims come from, they are going to come from publications that have been peer reviewed and are available. There's another example that we have. It's Mahana. It's an IBS solution. This is also in the digital health space. So it's cleared by the FDA as a digital therapeutic. It uses cognitive behavioral therapy to reduce IBS symptoms. And the treatment with this is 10 minutes a day over a 90-day course. It is available by prescription. So when we think about how does somebody access it, they're going to access by prescription. And then the cost of it is $199, but it is FSA and HSA eligible. This is one I don't know as intimately, right? Because it's not been the work that I have been doing, but it's great to see that when you go, there are 5 publications that they list on their website. And when you read them, they really chronicle the development of where they are right now. So they're publishing kind of their journey, which I think is a great thing to see, that there have been people working on something for a long period of time, that they're willing to publish their work along the way. And they test it, they're refining it, and really figuring out how they can take what is typically administered kind of in a one-to-one in-person way and progressively like lower the intensity in terms of software. What can they deliver through a software solution, because they know that will promote access. They have a pilot study that they published, pilot RCT. They gleaned insights from qualitative interviews there, to describe how that was used to improve the product. They have RCT, and here they found favorable outcomes for web-based CBT. And they use this to kind of keep building on what they're going to do next. So they took that and they bring it into this next one to figure out how they're going to continue to develop and refine their intervention.
So I think it's important to point out here as we're looking at this, this is not a device that's going to do that you have to press against or manipulate in any way to get data. But what they're doing is using qualitative research, which is a different animal for many healthcare providers to look at, because qualitative research is the research used in psychology and other aspects of healthcare actually. But it really, if done right, can bring powerful information and can really allow the approach that the questions and the feedback and the steps for people to take can really change in real time based on their responses and what they do. And I love the fact that this particular company is really using it to keep improving it and not just throwing it out there and saying, okay, everybody buy it, it's this much and good luck. But they're really like taking they're making sure that they're doing the research, although it may look differently than the research you've looked at recently. Those of you who are listening, it's really research to delve into, especially when you enter into the psychosocial aspect of the stuff that we're dealing with, including what Exena Health has done with bothersome UTI. Like some people have, I'm sorry, not infections, but incontinence. Some people have it and aren't bothered at all by it. Does it mean it can improve? Yes, but where we're really like where the difference is showing up is the people it's driving them crazy. They don't know what to do about it.
Right.
And the same with IBS. Some people can walk around with some stomach issues, and it's just not going to affect them in the way it's going to affect other people, which is why the CBT is such an important piece of this. Thanks for highlighting that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they're two interesting contrasts, because one is going to be like a device with software. And then this one is software only. And I think you can look at either one as being something that for all those rights, right patient, right time, and that it meets them where they are, can be something that is potentially helpful, to our patients. And again, just promoting access. Lots of other examples are out there, but these are two. So you'll see in the slides, just kind of a bit of a framework, really simple framework, but just something that you can just start thinking about and applying to different products you might be familiar with already, you've just started to learn about, and you think that maybe would be good for your patients and clients. And maybe they come into you. I think a lot of us have had that experience too, where they're like, hey, I heard about this. Do you think that this would work for me? And this would be kind of a quick way to start thinking about it. So you can classify like, what's the name of it? What type of product is it? What's the mechanism of action? So pretty much just like, what's the basic premise? Like when I really get down to, the nuts and bolts of this, what is the basis of why this would work? Regulatory status, that's the stuff with regard to the FDA, the indications which would emerge from an FDA clearance. What kind of clinical data do they have to support the work that they're doing, or what evidence do you have around a strategy maybe that they're pursuing? How does somebody access this product? Do they order it online? Do they have any kind of support once they do? So if they order it online and they have issues, does the company provide support? Or are you going to be the person who helps them to troubleshoot those different things? So I think these are just some of the kind of the key, components that you can think about. And this is just a reminder of kind of where to search for some of this information. So product name is going to be easy, but a company website is probably where you're going to start finding some of their marketing claims. They're going to say, what percentage of people get better or like have this improvement in this kind of symptom? Those are claims. Like when we talk about claims, it's going to be something that is like, it's going to do this. And claims also apply to how a company is going to describe the health condition that they're focused on. So, pay attention to the language that's used around how to describe, bowel disorders. How are they describing pelvic organ prolapse or, whatever is the health condition? So, are they providing citations if they're talking about prevalence numbers? Like, I think that's a great thing to see is when there's a lot of rigor applied to even their understanding of the health condition and the space beyond the product. But you're going to see these claims in social marketing. You're going to see claims on patient brochures, or if there's something that's targeting clinicians. Then the FDA status and indication. We had some information around how you could go and search for that. And quite literally, you can land on the letter that was sent to the company to say, we've looked at it and we've approved this indication. You'll find that language within those PDFs. Look for trials that are registered on clinicaltrials.gov. You certainly can search for citations of published clinical data. Most companies, if they've got it, are going to be really proud of that, and you'll find your way to that like on their site. But you also can go kind of search for it on your own. PubMed is a great resource for that. So just a way that would look here, just based on the few that we talked about, is like we classified into these buckets that, we've identified. We've got one thing that could be classified as a digital therapeutic, but it's really like hardware, medical device. It has a mobile app. The Mahana is digital therapeutic, but it's a mobile app only, and they specifically are cleared as a digital therapeutic. That's not the case for Leva. The mechanism of action. So with Leva, it's that there are motion sensors and visual biofeedback, as well as health education. And then in Mahana, it's CBT. Regulatory status, we see that both of these are FDA cleared products with specific indications. So we read the language of the Leva on slides earlier. The Mahana indication, like what is improved in their language, is CBT to adults 22 and older, diagnosed with IBS, 3 months of treatment, and it's intended to be used with other IBS treatments. So when I talk about language, like this is some of the stuff you can kind of tease out when you look at that. Clinical data, both of these products have a really nice body of supportive clinical data to them. Access, we saw from Mahana, the cost is $199 per month, available by prescription, FSA, HSA eligible. For Leva, the retail cost is $1,200, available by prescription, and is really actively working with payers to get reimbursement and has achieved some notable wins. So Cigna has it covered on a national policy. Highmark has written it into policy. And then there is a benefits verification process in place to work with some other commercial insurers. And then from a support perspective, again, this one product I know really well. So I do know that there is kind of coaching and care management and technical support that is part of what's offered to everybody using it. There are provider reports, so it captures data. People fill out the UDI-6 or the CRADI-8 within the app on a monthly basis. That information, as well as their adherence, is reported back to clinicians on a monthly basis. And that's kind of, again, like one of these real benefits of digital health. And I just couldn't find anything on the Mahana website to be able to identify that. And sometimes that's what will happen, right? Like some of these buckets will be unknown, and you just do the best you can with that. So I feel like I had some roller skates on and talked at you a lot, but and I know there's information on these slides I didn't even get to go into, but I wanted to try to button us within about 45 minutes and at least walk you through all of these. So I will pause there And
That's great. Yeah, I have a couple of
that's it.
questions that we can
Yep.
do before we end. Um, so I think that when we're looking at the application of digital health, and you can go ahead and stop your screen share if you
Okay.
want, Jessica.
Great.
I think again, people have preconceived notions and biases about it, and
Hmm.
the opportunity here with this interview and the approach that you have taken is to get everybody to think differently. It's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. Is it the best thing? In some instances, it may be the only thing. In other
Right.
instances, it could be an adjunct to care, such as Mahana. Um,
Hmm.
who knows how Mahana is gonna build this out with the advancement of artificial intelligence. The cognitive behavioral resources and coaching can actually reach a higher level on a
Hmm.
platform like Mahana. If anybody is skeptical about that, go and research what Noom is doing for weight loss, because
Yeah.
they have the coaching that comes through the artificial intelligence is brilliant. Does it replace the
Hmm.
one-to-one coach? No, but for many
Right.
people, they can access that app now and get going and have great success because they couldn't afford the one that had the coaching with it. You can always
Hmm.
upgrade to coaching, so who knows what Mahana may do next? Who knows how, Leva will come out, down the road when there's more clinicians working with this device. But
Right.
again, I think it's important to realize we have one of the things I hear from the clinicians and membership as well as around everywhere is people are too busy to come to therapy, you know? And so if that's the case, then let's bring the therapy to them.
Yeah.
If
Susan,
people
that's
get
such a great point. I just want to jump in and like fist bump you on that one. That is why I have been doing this work. I mean, it's not an easy decision to step away from your own practice. I mean, just to like be very transparent and personal with this group. And that was a decision I made because like while like every other practice we had a wait list and I mean like same story that you hear, and I was like, I've done everything I can think to do within the confines of this space. How does technology give me a path to just do something more? Like how can I get something therapeutic to stand in that gap for those people who have to wait or will never come see me at all, like they're too busy to come,
right.
live too far away. I mean, like you name it, those barriers, like I said, there's so many.
Mhm.
Um, so just
Postpartum,
thank you for making that
yeah,
point. Right, right, absolutely postpartum.
somebody who's stuck
Um,
in being a caregiver to different members of their family or in their community, regional constraints like you talked about, people who
right.
travel a lot. This the idea that they can access something as long as, we have the ability to suggest something to appropriateness. Like if somebody's got terrible vaginismus and pelvic pain, we're not going to suggest, the
Oh,
product by Xena Health. We're just not going to. We
right,
do that, right?
right, right. And
Mhm.
that's a great chance to like reinforce like why I'm like, what does the FDA indication say? And like, how does a company market? Right? Because that's not right patient. That is
Right,
not like that
right.
doesn't fit with the indication of that Leva product, for example. So it's like for the patient for whom it would be really appropriate and it matches, then that's it. And that frees up your schedule maybe for the person who
Right,
doesn't have an option like that to come in.
right, or you would be able to see them less often,
Yeah,
knowing that
yeah.
there's people who are gonna do these things and do it, and why not use it the ones
Hmm.
who are gonna need much more one-on-one can have access to that,
Hmm.
and the people with the GI disorders and IBS, and I've talked about this 1,000 times, and I know everybody who's heard me talk realize that nervous system regulation is a huge part of this, and I can't emphasize it enough. It doesn't more
Hmm.
so than what you eat. And
Hmm.
so these companies like Nerva and Mahana and things are stepping in to fill that hole because we don't have time or we're not cognitive
Yeah,
based therapists. And how many times have our
right.
clients said, I had a therapist, I didn't like them. And it's like, well, they may not have been like privy to talk to you about your
Hmm.
IBS or something like that. There's 1,000 reasons, but with the mental health support that we're getting in the digital space, which is a godsend, um,
Hmm.
because there's people who are actually accessing mental health therapy that wouldn't or couldn't before. But
That's right.
the space has given them the safety and the
That's
relevance,
right.
right? And the ability
That's
to do
right.
the three things that have to happen in order for people to move forward. They have to be consistent with it. So digital
Hmm.
work with many people helps them with consistency. It's
Hmm.
relevant to because it's relevant to the problem that they're having right now, and it's
Hmm.
safe.
Yeah,
They can do it in a safe place, under
that's
safe,
right.
and
Yeah.
type of digital health can help us achieve those parameters for our patients so that they can continue to grow and change.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think none of us would deny what the movement that has happened within the mental health space. And I think that we do well to learn from that and to really push outside of our comfort zones, right? I mean, I think that if I generalize, most PTs, like we feel like we're most comfortable within the confines of our clinic space, right? I mean,
Mhm,
like we have a defined physical space where that happens. And the movement into, telerehab, telehealth has been really powerful. But I hope that we as a field really are energized by what we see around us and can figure out how can like something be better than nothing, like, and
mhm,
what can we do to really stand in the massive chasm that we have in terms of who accesses rehab like in a PT capacity and who actually needs it and never gets it. And
mhm.
that's outside of even the public health space. That is like broad. So
Right,
maybe I'll come back and we'll dish on that on another on another
exactly,
interview.
exactly, but remember, the reason that mental health has had such a charge and such a high outcome is when you look back in the slides that Jessica has left for you, and you look back at the prevalence of, the where the money was being spent. It was early on in the slides.
Mhm.
Hands down, the money was being spent in the mental health space, and
Yeah.
we probably need to spend more there. But that's why it's gone leaps and bounds because the money's there. So if we can
Mhm.
convince, payers to understand that this is a way to have branches of rehab science move ahead, and
Mhm.
still have goals and still have reasons for rehab science, it only
Right.
increases our body of knowledge and helps our outreach in a much more positive way. Can you imagine going and doing some of the workshops that all of you have been doing to teach people about pelvic health? Can you imagine going and redoing those workshops and taking a product with you that could get them
Mm.
right away and could answer questions and
Right.
get them to get a prescription from their doctor for it? And they're going to, believe you and trust you and say, wow, this started to help me. I think I need to go see her to finish this up. Or, if you need a one on one with me to learn how to use it and get it set up and get going, that's great. We can do that, can build a day out of that and
Yeah.
introduce people to ways to take care of themselves. They'll never forget you for it. They'll
That's
always
right.
remember that you were the one who actually helped them find a way forward that was different than what they were willing to do.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
anyway, this was great. Thank you so
That's
much.
fun.
Here on the post for everybody. Feel free to take a look at those and take with them what you want. Jessica, one last question for you.
Yes.
When they go to clinicaltrials.gov or they go to PubMed to look for specific clinical trials, what
Mhm.
keywords do you suggest people use?
So on clinicaltrials.gov, I suggest using product name, company name as a start. If that doesn't get you where you need to be, either it's not registered, like there's not something registered, or then you can search by health condition. Um, so that would be one. I think that you are much less likely to see product name, company name come up anywhere on PubMed. When something is published kind of in the academic literature, usually it's unbranded. I mean, that's the way that that would be. So then you are more likely to find it either by searching health condition or more specifically, like the co-investigators. So if you find something on clinicaltrials.gov, you'll see like what institutions are participating. You'll see the name of at least one, if not more, investigators in the trial that have been named. So you could search their name in PubMed, and look for what's published, that, kind of is assigned to them, what they have done. And that's a way. Those are some of
Yeah,
the ways to do that.
yeah.
It's really great. I mean, you can create a profile in PubMed if, like, if you're really interested, you can set up some alerts around health conditions or, keywords that you can do, and those can get delivered to your inbox. But that's what I'd recommend as a start. And then, like I said, most company websites or wherever they are housing their material should have a way that fairly clearly directs to any published data. Yeah.
Sounds good. I just wanted to get that out there so people
Yeah. Thanks.
can think about how, oh, I want to really look this up and I really should go and take a look at it. But the clinical trial
Yeah.
is a great place to start. And
Yeah.
PubMed is another, and then find the authors, find the
Mm-hmm.
people who are involved in the work and start searching
Mm-hmm.
for them. And most of the time when you reach out to them too, they're so generous. They
That's
love
right.
the fact that you're looking for you. They're so happy to do it. So
That's right. That's right.
always. Okay, thank you so much
Great.
for your time,
My
and
pleasure.
we appreciate it. If we have any other questions that come up, I will shoot them along to you.
That's
And
great.
thanks for sharing your time, and we appreciate it so much. All right, everybody,
All
have
right.
a great
Thanks.
day.